If you're a gamer or perhaps just a Netflix enjoyer, or doing work on a computer, there's a good chance that the majority of your day is going to be spent looking at a TV screen or a monitor. And so that's going to be the centerpiece of your entertainment and work, and therefore it needs to offer great color accuracy. It needs to have a lot of features, ideally perhaps even smart features if, again, you're watching something like Netflix. And so when KTC reached out to me asking if I would be interested in taking a look at one of their screens, I thought, well, why not? So then, this is a sponsored showcase of the A32Q8 screen from KTC. So this is a screen that really is walking the fine line between a computer monitor or a screen perhaps for gaming and also a TV, because while it does have many monitor-like features, ultimately it also has a lot of smart capabilities. So for example, you can use voice control for something like Netflix, but it also has excellent color accuracy, and also is pretty great for something like a screen for your Nintendo Switch or for your PlayStation 5. The other major selling point of this screen is that the pricing of the screen is absolutely fantastic and is often cheaper than many of the rival displays that would have actually the same panel. So with that said, let's start to take a look at the features, specifications, and capabilities of the machine. So as usual, we'll start things out with an overview of the device's aesthetics, then move on to specifications and features, and then finally discuss performance. So the bezel and the sides of the display are a nice neutral tone, super thin, just under half a centimetre. The bottom bezel, meanwhile, of the A32Q8, which also houses the KTC logo at the centre, is taller, but is still pretty small at 1.5 centimetres. This basically does absolutely nothing to distract you from the image in the center of the display, which is obviously the key point of any monitor. The stand is pretty nondescript and allows you to tilt the display forwards and backwards, but not spin it side to side. I will add, however, the stand is pretty heavy and sturdy. It's basically a big chunk of metal, so, well, if nothing else, the display will be very stable. Though, if you prefer to mount the display, at the rear there's the standard VESA mount for wall and arms. The connectivity falls in line with users' most needs. USB-C port, which can also charge a device and act as a display port alternative if you need. A USB 1.4 and a HDMI 2.0. The HDMI does support ALLM, which is great if you have a PS5 for example, but supports 8-bit color only, while the DisplayPort supports a full 10-bit color. Additionally, there's 4 USB 2.0 ports. This is for things like plugging in a keyboard and mouse and storage, etc. And there's also, of course, an audio jack and power jack too, and that also is for a separate power brick. For those wondering, yes, at the rear side of the monitor is also a thumb joystick. I've no idea if that's actually the proper name for these things, but yeah, let me know in the comments if you've heard differently. And this is also to control the OSD if you don't have a remote control handy or you run out of batteries. As a nice surprise, the unit comes with screwdrivers of sorts, and these can be used to both install the base stand, there's 3 screws total for that, and the second is used to open the battery compartment of the remote control. While the unit comes with 2 batteries installed in the remote control from the factory, you'll need to open it up to remove the plastic tab so that the batteries obviously make contact and you can actually use the remote. So now let's dive into the official specifications before then looking at the performance. Like I've mentioned a few times already in this review, the screen is 32 inches, with the panel being about 31.5 inches viewable. The contrast ratio is 3000:1 with 99% sRGB and 94% DCI-P3 coverage, and also supports HDR10. This is not quite up to the standards of a professional grade Photoshop screen, as those things cost a ridiculous amount of money for perfect color accuracy, but I think it's more than sufficient for most home users if you're a hobbyist or perhaps if you're developing mostly web-focused content. Frankly, by the time video compression takes its pound of flesh on color accuracy, and then you have the end user's monitor and their settings taking the chunk away, well, yeah, color accuracy isn't really a big deal in most cases anyway. We'll talk more about accuracy in the moment, but yeah, in essence, it's pretty damn good, with excellent details in the shadows and very vibrant colours. The panel is 60Hz and 4K, but the latencies, however, are pretty decent, around 7 milliseconds G to G if using the game mode and tweaking the overdrive. We'll look more at this in just a second, but the screen is great for most gaming scenarios. If you're using something like a Switch or a base PS5, most games are locked at 60Hz anyway. Now, the monitor does support ALLM, and for the PS5 anyway, seems to work happily with VRR to mitigate any frame drops. If you're a PC user meanwhile, DisplayPort works great for AMD and Nvidia graphics card, but if you're using HDMI, then that will be for AMD FreeSync only. Once again, as a reminder, the screen is 60Hz, yes, but VRR can make the difference up on games which are less stable, particularly on consoles. Remember also many PS5 titles on the base system will have 40Hz modes, for example Spider-Man, Horizon, Last of Us, and many others. If you're a hardcore Twitch shooter fan, then you may prefer to go with one of KTC's other screens. I'll leave a couple of links in the video description, but one example would be the H32S17, that's 165Hz 1440p display, or an M32P10 for a 4K 144Hz display. Both of these, as the name implies, are 32 inches, but obviously there are a lot of different sizes and options available on their website for you to peruse. For the settings then, the screen has a wide range of different modes and options available, and while they're certainly not bad out of the box, just like every screen on the market essentially, I think a little tweaking can make a lot of difference. And the good news is I've gone through the settings for you guys and made a quick guide here, and you may want to tweak it a little bit to your tastes, but I think from my experience anyway, this looks pretty great. I'd suggest opening the settings, picture menu, then setting the picture mode to PC game. Backlight, the setting high 70s looks nicest to me, and disable dynamic backlight for most content. Under color temp set to warm, and the color space set to native. This will really help to make sure that the text is the most neutral in color, at least in my personal opinion. And then back in the previous main menu, turn on PC mode. And the game option, you want to set ALLM to auto, and overdrive gain, I'd suggest negative of high 20s to possibly somewhere in 30s to 40 range. Leave everything else to 0. Basic settings, I'd leave pretty much everything to default. Do not touch the brightness as it starts to affect all the tones. So if you do want to tweak the backlight, if you feel that things are a little bit too light or dark for specific content. I also feel that the contrast is best at around 50, perhaps 55 in some games. I think that looks really nice with the PS5, for example, on something like Final Fantasy. And I also slightly bumped up saturation, as I personally prefer a slightly oversaturated image, but of course that may slightly differ to your tastes. Under professional settings, I would suggest putting gamma to either +1 or 2. Personally, I prefer 2. I think once again it's the most accurate, and I would also disable smooth gradation and any other dynamic controls. When you first switch on the screen and go through the basic setup process, you are essentially left with having the choice of 2 different modes of operation. The first is basic TV functionality. This allows you to use all of the things on the display, such as display ports, HDMI, and also something like, let's say, Netflix. But if you choose to leverage Google Assistant, you can pair it with a Google account. Now this will allow you to access a lot more features, including the fact you can hold the mic button on your remote control, and you could say something like Google switch to YouTube, or switch to the PS5 and do searches and that type of thing. So it does provide a lot of extra flexibility and functionality if you also have other smart devices in your home which support Google Assistant. Unfortunately, I don't have any other devices in my home to pair with the Google Assistant, so I can't demonstrate that. To be clear though, I really want to stress this, you do not need to have these features enabled if all you want to do is use Netflix without Google integration, or let's say use your display for PC or gaming, and of course you can still access all of the color adjustments, all of the ports, you just simply won't be utilizing the smart features. So what about gaming then? Well, let's start out with the PlayStation 5, and things went smoothly enough. The system automatically detected the correct resolution and other settings, and we were off to the races. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a game I'm still playing through, but on the base model here looks absolutely beautiful, providing you set the game to favour visuals, simply because obviously the game is very taxing on the PS5 and, well, resolution can become a bit of an issue. Now, that means all of the footage captured here is with the visual quality settings enabled, but as I previously mentioned, shadows and highlights are very detailed with this screen, and crisp and image vibrancy is definitely very apparent. Astrobot is another title that really does benefit from a very rich colour palette, and again, I think it looks absolutely beautiful here. I still haven't actually played through the full game bundled with the PS5, let alone the standalone release from earlier this year, so I'm not quite sure as to why, because every time I play the game I've really enjoyed it. So let me know, you guys, in the comments below if you think I should check out the full game or not. I'm still somewhat on the fence, but it does feel really fun. Very, well, kind of Mario-esque. Probably doing it a bit of a disservice to say that, but still. And finally, I decided to go with something very different on the PS5 for its art direction, the Demon's Souls remake. And this is a title that I haven't played in around 3 years, so I thought I would do an absolutely genius move. I would play with a class that I haven't played before, and basically I've forgotten most of the buttons. What could go wrong? Well, actually, pretty much very little, since the class I chose is essentially one-shotting enemies before they can get close to me. I'm not sure whether this is the best or most overpowered class in the game, by the way. I don't really know that much about it. I just kind of like start bonking things. So if this is like a free win button, let me know, or does it not end up scaling too well later? Regardless, the gloomy and dark atmosphere, shadowy details are perfectly represented. I also decided to play some PC games, and so I decided to plug my main test rig into the screen using the display port, and then using the NVIDIA control panel enabled G-Sync. I'm running an RTX 4090 here, so titles like Resident Evil 4 aren't very taxing at 4K, even without FSR or some other upscaling tech enabled, but also Cyberpunk looks pretty nice. I decided to show you guys some bright light coming in from the office window to get you an idea of reflections, but honestly it's not too bad at all, and if I were to even slightly make an effort to close up blinds or something like that, it would not be an issue, and I recorded this at, well, the brightest portion of the day. Well, I say that, and obviously it's kind of winter now, but you get the idea. Finally, on PC, I switched to my second system and did a little bit of Photoshop work. I'm not exactly someone who does professional color grading, but for me anyway, I think this is more than up to the task of doing basic Photoshop thumbnail work that I kind of do, Adobe Premiere or anything like that. And finally, since this is a smart TV and all, let's test out some of the media capabilities. The long story short is Netflix and YouTube, along with Amazon and all the other applications you'd expect, all work great. Unfortunately, I don't want to show off too much footage of Netflix here due to, well, copyright and stuff like that on YouTube. But like I said earlier in the showcase, the Google Voice search also works perfectly. So I can tell it to switch to Netflix and watch a show, such as Breaking Bad, if I want to, using voice rather than standard on-screen menus. A few of the other features of the KTC A32Q8 I'd like to highlight include the ability to plug in your PC or laptop to the screen using USB-C and then control it via a keyboard and mouse. This is assuming, of course, your device does support display over USB-C. Here I'm running my test bench using the screen via an RTX 2080 Ti because it does include the aforementioned USB-C capability. Unfortunately, my laptop doesn't support this feature despite it being pretty common in newer models. And ironically, USB-C is no longer a common output on current generation cards, such as the RTX 4090 that I've got. With this said, once you choose USB-C as the input, the display works as you'd expect at 4K, and allows you to take full advantage of the attached keyboard and mouse to play games or otherwise use Windows as you normally would. Additionally, the display works with devices such as iPhone, iPad, or many Android phones by simply plugging it in via USB-C as well. Here I've plonked in my iPhone 15 Pro Max, and it allows me to type notes using the keyboard, with both the iPhone and keyboard attached to the KTC A32Q8. You can also watch YouTube videos and the like as well, assuming you don't simply want to cast them to the screen directly via the YouTube app. Unfortunately, I don't have an Android phone to test this, so I can't show you guys Miracast working correctly. But with Miracast, as you can see via this diagram here, you can essentially run split screen with both a phone and say a laptop connected to the screen and control them via keyboard and mouse. The phone works wirelessly, and you would plug the screen in to the monitor via USB-C, but unfortunately my iPhone just won't play ball with this. But for those of you with a modern Android device, then you are certainly in luck. Aside from all of those features, Android TV also allows you to use the device natively with a keyboard and mouse, and this can be handy for doing things such as searching for something on Play Store or perhaps a movie or something on YouTube, but it does provide you some other flexibility. For example, you can get a note-taking app which allows you to copy and paste and, well, obviously take notes. There's even a desktop OS app which is freely available and offers you a GUI and web browser and file browsing features. It's not exactly going to replace the need for a high-end desktop for a power user, but if you want to do basic tasks like, for example, just simply browsing the internet or perhaps Google Docs or file browsing, then this is going to be more than fine. I think given the price that KTC are asking for this screen, indeed, currently there are some really good sales because it's Black Friday and obviously we're moving into the Christmas season, so you're getting the screen for around $200 to $250 US, depending on your region and retailer. And that's $100 to $150 US cheaper than many of the rival screens that are on the market that are using the same display and have similar feature sets. So in other words, that would have the same resolution and 60 Hz refresh rate. Now on the refresh rate question, to me, I think that this screen is really nice paired up with a PS5 or a Nintendo Switch. After all, if you're playing something like Mario Odyssey, you don't exactly play that game at 120 Hz. And even on the PC, slower paced titles, for example Alan Wake 2, are probably going to be absolutely okay with 60 Hz. And given the fact that this screen once again has all of the smart functionality and it has pretty great color reproduction, then I think this is going to be a nice catch-all screen. With that said, if you do need higher refresh rates, then of course KTC do have other screens on offer, some of the aforementioned screens that I've already discussed here. So of course you can check all of that out in the video description. Personally speaking, I think this would be an excellent screen in a bedroom, maybe for a kid if they've got like a Switch, or perhaps as a secondary screen in your home if you perhaps want to pair it up with like a laptop for doing some creativity work or what have you. So yeah, I think that this is a really nice screen. In terms of the quality as well, I have to say, I can only speak for my particular unit, but I haven't had any backlight issue, any backlight bleeding. There haven't been any stuck pixels or dead pixels. Again, obviously your mileage will probably vary as with any screen, but for my unit anyway, it has been absolutely perfect. So with that said, guys, I know that sponsored stuff and sponsored showcases, it is what it is for YouTube, but genuinely, this is a pretty nice screen, and I actually think I should still be using it possibly in the bedroom or something like that. But yeah, anyway, thanks very much to KTC for sponsoring the video, and also thank you for checking out the video. As usual, take care of yourselves, have an amazing day. Bye for now.